So welcome back to part two of this presentation about dairy industry and cattle slaughter in India. So we talked about the infinite or this exponential population growth that we have due to the dairy industry. And due to that overpopulation, 30 crores of cows and buffaloes are born every year. And that's simply not enough space to double the population every year. And you have all the death as a result. Okay. Now, if you're in Canada, 99.9% of all animals that are born, for one birth, there's one death. It's a system that's, run very, very systematically. In India, there's a small small percentage that are allowed to live. So there's this population growth that happens in India, and a few of them are saved in this system of goshalas and entrepreneurs and whatnot. But that's probably, 1%. Maybe some people keep them alive on the land, but it's a very, very small number compared to the amount that have to die in one way or another as the population doubles every 3 to 4 years. So this dairy industry is the root cause. I'm going to point out a movie that I would like everybody to watch. The movie is called Earthlings, and the website is www.earthlings.com, and you can see the movie for free. It's a movie about all the things that happens to animals around the world and how humans may mistreat them. So it's a very comprehensive movie, and there's a section there about cows in India, which they took a lot of research and videos about that. So it's really good to watch about these videos about what happens to cows in India, and there are other videos about this as well. Okay, but remember, if we don't slaughter them, then they will die in some other way. Okay, because the overpopulation just cannot exist. All right. When we look at the dairy products in India, India is the single largest consumer of dairy products in the world in total. And we have milk, we have tea, coffee, yogurt, buttermilk, which is chas, ghee, butter, paneer, ice cream. And the newest craze in India is cheese. People like cheese like anything, but it wasn't there 10 years ago, hardly. And even more products, all the sweets and everything like that. We consume massive amounts of dairy. To do that, we must get lots of milk. So you have to have this system of pregnancy repeatedly over and over and over again in order to get the amount of dairy that we consume. And the ways that we get dairy in India, as shown in this picture, there are these very traditional ways where there's small farmers hand milking cows and giving you in the small tins and pails and whatnot. And you have modern industry where the cows are continually connected to these machines and milked all the time, multiple times during the day, and processed in modern factories and packaged in Tetra Paks and plastic bottles and bags and all these kind of things. That's the other way. Those cows, we have no idea. They're all coming from big farms, and we have no idea what's happening to the cows. In terms of the consumers, don't know what's happening. But really, if we study what's happening, we do know that the number cannot continue to increase, year to year and year to year. There has to be some death to match the population birth rate. Okay, and that's what's happening. And we have all this advertising in the modern world of dairy of India. So there's a traditional and modern way of business of dairy in India. Okay, and this modern methods includes more and more factory farming. So with this factory farming, in a small space, they have thousands of cows, and they have very, very high production and different breeds, and using milking machines and all these kind of things, and they keep thousands of animals together. And again, there's a yearly pregnancy. They're very perfect to make every cow pregnant every year. And then as they, if they get 50% of the births will be males, there's no need for them. They're going to be slaughtered. And within every 2 years, you will double the population of females, right? So the mother will be replaced. She will be slaughtered. The baby will be used in her place approximately every 3 years. And this is just like what they do in the Western countries. And these are all the, milk coming in all these bags and whatnot. In the goshalas in the cities, when I talked about the one that's in Mulund in Bombay, there's 120 population of cattle there and a few buffaloes. And again, they are kept in confined spaces. They are tied all by the neck, and they're tied or chained. And there's only about 3 feet or 1 meter of that, and they can't move. They can sort of sit and stand, and they can barely stand and let their head go up. But they never get to go outside in these goshalas or these factory farms. They never get to see the sun or breathe the fresh air or walk on the ground or roam around or anything like that. They're only in that one spot for their entire life until they are slaughtered. So it's the most cruel process in these cities and in these massive factory farms. Okay. and these unknown cows that we get these the milk products from. Okay, so let's look at another angle. Let's look at the environment and take a look at some numbers about that. How many tigers are there on the earth? How many elephants? How many mice or rats are there on the earth? And then how many humans and how many cattle? So when it comes to tigers, there's a few hundred, maybe 1,000 tigers worldwide left in the wild. Almost all of them are killed. And there are only maybe 100,000, 200,000 elephants worldwide. In India, there's only about 20 to 30,000 estimated right now in about 2014, last year's statistics. There's only a few million mice worldwide. There's not that many. But humans, there are 7 billion. More than 7 billion, and the population is growing. By 2050, we expect about 9 billion, and by the end of the century, it could be 12 billion and maybe 15 billion beyond that. It depends on what humans do in terms of our own behavior and our own population control. In the past, people used to have 7, 10 babies, per lifetime, and would die in pregnancy, or many things like that would happen. And nowadays, people are having purposely less babies, but still, the number is not just at replacement. We're still above replacement. When we look at the cattle, cows and buffaloes, there are over 1 billion worldwide. That's an immense number, a huge number. If you took every mammal alive, every giraffe, antelope, deer, horse, zebra, mouse, rabbit, and added all of them up, the entire number of all of these mammals, these animals with hair that give milk to their young, they still would not add to 1 billion. The population of cattle is that much out of control. It's that huge that even all of these animals combined, you cannot add up to the number of cattle that there are. It's a huge population. It's completely out of balance with the number of any kind of natural animal that would exist on Earth. And because we are expanding the population of cattle for the purpose of milk and for the purpose of meat in different countries, it takes up all the land. And therefore, all of these other animals and all these jungles are cleared. And it basically helps kill off all the other animals, mainly because of their habitat destruction. We take over their habitat with these animals. There's a great United Nations document called Livestock's Long Shadow. You can go to Google and search for this 2006 document and other more modern United Nations documents and documents from many universities around the world and who do research on this, which shows that animal agriculture in total, that means cows, buffaloes, chickens, pigs, everything like that, if you add up the environmental impact and how much land it takes to grow these animals, it's the #1 land use of all industries by humans, and it takes up 1/3 of the non-frozen surface of the land, and is the biggest cause of environmental destruction worldwide. Simply put, if you are feeding somebody, if you feed me 10 kilograms of protein over, let's say, months or a year, it doesn't mean that my weight is going to increase by 10 kilograms, or even if a child is growing, for every kilogram of feed you give or protein that the child eats, they're all going to put on maybe 100 grams of body weight, and over time they will increase from child to adult size. Every gram is not converted into a gram of flesh. It takes about 6, 10, 15 grams, depending on the animal, the situation, and how they're grown, and what they're given, to grade 1 kilogram back of flesh. There's this inefficiency. You have to give this much feed. You have to give a lot of feed in order to get a very small amount of flesh. When it comes to milk products, it takes about 4 kilograms of protein to get back 1 kilogram of protein in terms of dairy. So to grow all this food to feed this animal takes a lot of water, takes a lot of land to grow that 4 kilograms of protein to get 1 kilogram back in the form of milk. And it's even worse ratio, as I mentioned, for meat. Okay, so we take up a lot more land. So feeding a meat eater takes this much land, a vegetarian takes this much land, and to feed somebody who eats only plant-based food takes the smallest amount of land. All right. Same thing with water. Animal agriculture takes up the largest amount of water on Earth than any other industry. It's the second largest cause of climate change and the first biggest cause of worldwide deforestation and habitat lost and wetland lost. Okay, there's excellent resources about this, as I mentioned, through the United Nations. Great movie called Cowspiracy. And I'm going to put links to these things in the YouTube channel when I post these videos, and there'll be links to all of these documents and studies as well so that you can see them. A great video by Dr. Richard Oppenheimer as well, and he does a lot of research on this and makes a great video about it. Okay. Cattle are not a natural animal. Okay, cattle were invented, cows and the domesticated buffalo were invented by humans. About 10,000 years ago, there was, well, for millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years, there was an animal called the auroch. Okay, this auroch was an original animal. It was a wild animal. It lived in the jungles and roamed in Europe and Asia and Middle East and whatnot. And people in Africa, North Africa, Middle East, about 10,000 years ago, they rounded up some of these and started domesticating them, started breeding them for specific purposes, for meat and for other purposes. And eventually they bred them to become cattle and cows, okay? But originally cows didn't exist before that. So just the way you have these house dogs, you have Pomeranians and German Shepherds and various variety of dogs that we know of, none of these dogs ever existed in nature. There were some wild dogs. People took them and bred them for certain characteristics and created all kinds of breeds of dogs, some very small and tiny like the Chihuahua or very big. And all of these dogs, none of them ever existed in the natural world. They were created by humans through breeding for various purposes, and we breed them for the characteristics we want, and we get these different shapes and sizes and characteristics of dogs. The same thing is with cattle. The same thing is with the domesticated pigs and chickens and house cats and sheep and many animals that we breed only for our human purposes. They are not the same as the natural animals that ever existed. The auroch became extinct about 400 years ago because the auroch lived in these kind of lands and eat certain kinds of foods. But we wanted that same food and we wanted that same land for our cattle, for our cows and everybody. So there's a competition. Who gets the food? So humans killed off the auroch, which was the original natural animal, and we are left with the domesticated animal, which is these breeds of cows that we now have. But before that, these cows never existed prior to 10,000 years. Okay, so it's not a natural animal. Now, I'm not saying that because it's not a natural original animal from nature that we should not have this animal. Of course, now it's with us, it's part of our extended family of animals, and we have to respect them and care for them. But we should bring their population in line with the animals of the natural world. Okay, because if we allow them to exceed this population so much by having 1 billion of them, and we cut down all these forests, we're killing everything in nature in order to have farmed animals, which are so many on this earth. And then we're also killing these animals because we breed them every year, and then we have such a killing of these animals as well. So we're at this huge population growth, and at the same time, we breed them, double their population, killing them so many times, and killing all other natural animals through habitat loss. So the idea is to keep these animals at a small number that can be sustainable. Okay. Let's talk about another angle, and that is health. Now, when we talk about health, people in India automatically start talking about Ayurveda, and they talk about ghee and butter and milk, and that Ayurveda says you must have these things in order to be healthy, and you cannot live without these things. It has such a high value for these animal products. Okay, even says ghee lubricates your joints. Well, science may differ from that, but let's think about why Ayurveda has this huge love and reverence for milk products. For thousands of years, and even in the last 50 years, and even today, for thousands of years and even until the last 50 years, what did most people die from? What is the biggest cause of death for human beings? What is the biggest cause of death? Okay. And even still, some people die today this way. And that is starvation. People died due to lack of food. They did not have enough protein, they did not have enough calories, and even other nutrients. People died from starvation. And in the starvation time, people are very thin, very malnourished. I've seen people like this in different parts of the world. In India, I used to see them all the time as a child. Now I don't see so many people who are starving and malnourished like that in this day and age. But also, when you are starving, you may die of hunger, but you may also die of an infection because your immune system is essentially not working. If you have hardly any protein and calories and you're not intaking anything, your immune system basically shuts down. It stops working. It might work at 5%. And any kind of small infection, if you get a cold, what we call sardi, or a small diarrhea or any virus, it can kill you. you get a fever and you can die. And even nowadays, most of the time people get a fever, they get really scared because there's this tradition of fear that we have a fever. Now, most of the time, 99% of the time, it's nothing. It's just a cold. We get better. But there's quite a bit of fear about fever because in the old days, you get a fever, you can die. That's what happened with most people because they didn't have enough calories. They didn't have enough nutrients. So we'd love to have a source of this. And in Ayurveda, the biggest source of calories available to the Indian population in this tradition was milk and ghee and butter. Lots of fat and lots of protein that you can take at the same time. If your immune system is not working, you take this stuff, you eat this stuff, your immune system may turn on and a person who's dying may survive again. But in other cultures around the world that were not vegetarian, what did they have when they were sick? Well, they may have had meat, they may have had eggs, or they had fish in some places, and in some places even they would drink the blood of animals. So when they were sick, the traditional medicine people in those places would say, you have to eat meat or milk or fish or blood or whatever in those places. Because that's the most concentrated source of protein and most concentrated source of calories that was available to people around the world. So just the way Ayurveda says that these things are important for us, milk and milk products, the same way these traditional places of around the world will give the same value to meat. They would save the life of somebody who was sick. A child who was not growing properly, who was stunted growth, and would, their immune system wouldn't function, they wouldn't grow properly, their even mind would not develop properly. You give them milk, or you give them meat, or eggs, or whatever it is, they would continue to grow. Now, in certain parts of China and certain parts of Asia, they had available soybeans, and they would make tofu and soy milk, and they would give that a huge amount of value and a huge amount of reverence. And why? Because there's a huge amount of protein and calories in this soybean. If you give it to a sick person, they will survive. If you give it to a person who is starving, they will put on weight, and a child will grow and their mind will develop. So they have this huge reverence for the soybean. So we have all these soy products here. You see this book here, Chicken Soup for the Soul, because people believed if you get sick, give them chicken soup. But what do people die of today around the world, especially the Western world, and especially in India? What do most Indian people die of now? They're not dying of starvation. They're not dying of just the cold virus and then they die. That's not what's happening. Now, people get heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, cancers, especially cancer of the breast, prostate, and lung. And three of those cancers, breast, prostate, colon, lung are the four main cancers, and breast, prostate, and colon are dietary related. High blood pressure, cholesterol medications, common. We have different problems and different cause of death than we did for hundreds and thousands of years. And milk now is one of the main causes. So we look at, why do Indian vegetarians have the same diseases as non-vegetarian people, in India? And that is because milk and eggs and meat, they all have a similar protein. They all have animal protein. And the fat in milk and meat and eggs is the same. It's animal fat. So in the old days, when you're dying of starvation, definitely more protein, more fat will save your life. You'll live longer. Everything will be better. But in modern times, when we have enough to eat and we have lots to eat, the excess of these things, basically even small amounts of these things, increase our chances of heart attack and cancers and all those diseases. Milk is basically liquid meat. When you look at Indian vegetarians, they die, in many cases, they get even more diabetes, even more heart attacks and cholesterol problems than the non-vegetarians. And what's the reason for that? So we see that in India, a lot of times people who are vegetarian happen to be from a higher wealth background. They're more educated and whatnot. So they have more money, and they have milk products 3 or 4 times per day. They may have milk products, whereas people who have meat may not have as much money, and they may only have a tiny amount of milk, and they may eat meat only 2 or 3 times a week. So their net consumption of animal products is much lower than the vegetarian. They have a very small consumption of animal products compared to the vegetarians. Therefore, they have less diabetes and less heart attacks compared to the other vegetarians. Milk is liquid meat when it comes to our health effects, So it saves you if you are starving, but it's bad for you when in our current lifestyle, when we don't have starvation problems, we have these other problems, Now, in the West, vegetarians, their meat eaters have, let's say, a certain amount of dairy and they have a certain amount of meat. If they become vegetarian, they have the same amount of dairy, not a higher amount, because vegetarians in the Western countries are basically not any richer or poorer than the non-vegetarians. So you have people just eliminating the meat but having the same amount of dairy products. So the net consumption of animal products has been reduced if you become vegetarian in the West. So Western vegetarians have a longer lifespan, less cancer, less heart attacks as compared to the meat-eating counterparts. But in the East, the vegetarians may actually have higher animal protein and animal fat consumption. Let's look at another thing. Humans are the only animal that drinks the milk of another animal. Okay? Giraffe only drinks giraffe and milk, and dogs only dog milk, and elephants only elephant milk, cows only cow milk, and so forth. All mammals drink the milk of their mother. If it was normal for humans to drink the milk of an animal, they wouldn't have to hand milk another animal. They would just probably go up to any cow or camel or anybody they want to give milk and start, sucking just like the baby of that animal. But of course, humans don't do that. We tie these animals up. We have all kinds of systems to get them pregnant, and then we take the milk. Animals don't give milk. We take the milk. We don't speak of that the right way. Okay? If it was natural for a human to drink the milk of another animal, then a newborn human baby, a baby that was just born today, could automatically drink the milk of a cow or a sheep or a camel or a buffalo or anything like that. But what would happen if we gave this newborn baby the milk of another animal? That baby will die. It cannot survive. It will get imbalance of the right fats and proteins compared to what it needs. The only milk that this baby can drink, a human baby, is that of a human. That's the only milk that this human baby can drink. Okay, we can take soy milk or milk of a cow or something and process it so that it becomes in the same way as human milk, the right proportion of fat, protein, and the right types of fat and protein and fluid and salts and all those things, and then use that, but not the automatic, milk of any other animal. Okay, so that's showing, and only after the baby gets a little bit bigger can it drink the milk of another animal. Let's say it's after 9 months or a year, but otherwise we can cause kidney damage or basically kill the baby. Okay. Now, somatic cell count. In every drop of milk from any animal, there's always some blood. Okay, white blood cells mostly, some red blood cells, and some skin cells. Now, you can look at Indian journals on dairy production, and you find lots of information about this. Western journals, everybody knows about this in the scientific field. It's normal. It's normal for blood cells to be in milk. And what happens is that if somebody's a baby and they drink milk from the mother, they get some immune system cells. So the human will drink human milk and get some human immune cells will go into the intestines and stomach and help give some protection to the baby. Okay? But that's only meant for human blood cells to go to the human baby and give that protection, not the cow's blood cells or anybody else. So when we drink the milk of another animal, we are actually drinking a small amount of blood. Now, the blood is about approximately 100,000 cells per ml. So that's microscopic. You can't see it, but it's there. Only under the microscope you can see these blood cells that they're automatically there. And if it's high quality milk, then there's less than 100,000. If it's low quality, there's more than 100,000. And when there's infection of the udder, of the milk parts of the animal, and we see that a lot in India because they're living in, dirty situations. There's a lot of dirt, hygiene problems, a lot of infections of the cow udder, and then you get 300,000 cells, 400,000 cells per ml of milk. And so we're always drinking a little bit of blood from the animal, which is not meant for us. It's only meant for the baby of the animal. And if there's an infection of there, then it's not good. If doing hand milking, there's actually a higher quantity of blood cells compared to machine milking. But it doesn't matter which method we use, there's always going to be some blood that's there. Okay. So let's talk about solutions. What can we do? Okay. If you talk to people in Canada 20 years ago and say, hey, you should go vegetarian, you should stop eating this chicken and beef and pigs and all these other animals that you're eating, they'll be very surprised and they won't even hear the word vegetarian. They will think that it's a very, very strange concept. But now there's lots of vegetarians in USA and Canada, and the number is increasing all the time. Lots of more vegetarians. Similarly, the word vegan means pure vegetarian. No animal products are used whatsoever. And if in India you talk to people about stopping the use of all animal products, like not wearing leather for chappals or not using milk or something, it'll be a very surprising concept. But this is a concept that is now coming more and more amongst people around the entire world. Okay, so if there's what can we eat instead of using any animals for our meat or chicken or eggs? What can we eat that will reduce our rates of cancer, reduce our heart disease and diseases, use less land and use less water, and even give us better or equal nutrition than milk? Okay? So that's what we have to think. So what we're talking about here is a pure vegetarian diet. When they say pure veg and they include dairy, that's not actually pure vegetarian. Most of those cows are being hurt and used by humans as slaves. Okay, this is a type of slavery. Okay, vegan means pure vegetarian, means no animal products, no flesh, no eggs, and no milk products. Okay, so what do we eat instead? So what we're talking about is a whole food, plant-based diet, a healthy, amazing whole food plant-based diet. Okay, vegan. Okay, now what are the four main vegan food groups? There's the family of kator, that means pulses or legumes. So there's all kinds of beans and lentils and dals and so many of that in that family. There's many different kinds. Okay, there's also nuts and seeds, which we can put into that category, or we can group them with grains as well, but you know, walnuts and almonds and cashews and all those kind of nuts. All right, and seeds, sunflower seeds and sesame seeds and flax seeds and so many things. We can, you know, that can fit into kind of either group. And there's also whole grains. So there's so many different kinds of grains. There's wheat, there's barley, there's oats, there's different kinds of rice and wild rice and all these kind of grains, okay, and quinoa and all those kind of things. There's fruits of so many kinds and vegetables. So those are the four main vegan food groups. And when we talk about a whole food vegan diet, we don't mean eating, you know, oily and fried foods and all those things. That's not whole food. Oil is not a whole food. You know, we're talking about, you know, whole foods, in eating them in their entirety. When you have a whole grain flour and whole grain bread and those kind of things, that's what whole foods are. Okay. So where do I get my protein? Everybody in India right now is looking at these movie stars. They're all these bodybuilders and everybody is crazy about this stuff. So who do we have here? We have a gorilla that is, you know, these gorillas are 10 times, 20 times, 30 times as strong as a human. They eat only plants. That's all they ever eat. Okay, so many animals. The elephant, same thing. This man over here, Patrick Bahumian, he's from Germany, and he is currently the world's strongest man. He broke the record in, I think, 2013. He broke the record lifting the heaviest weight that any human has ever lifted and carrying it 10 meters within 60 seconds. Okay, he broke the world record. That was in Toronto. And he's a super strong guy, lifting, I think it was 520 kilograms, even a little bit more than that. And to do this, he's completely vegan. That means pure vegetarian. He actually has his master's degree. He's a very educated guy. And he says, why would I do this? You know, just lifting some dumb weights, you know, for entertainment of people. If I'm such an educated person, I can get any job, you know, in my field. And the reason is that he's a humanitarian. He believes in Jivdaya. He believes in compassion to all life. And he believes in environmental issues. And he wants human health as well. And he wants to show people that you can be the strongest man in the world on a purely vegan, plant-based diet. You just have to eat the right foods. So what do we have in terms of the right foods in India? We have so many foods that we have traditionally. Chickpeas, kidney beans, rajma, chole, that is, mung beans, so many different kinds of dal. We have delicious and great foods like idli and sambar, which is very high in protein. Peanuts. Then there's also seeds, things that we are not so used to. There's hemp seeds and quinoa, which are now starting to make their way into India, but are very high protein foods. Eating whole grains. So if you have whole grain flour, that has, you know, 10% protein by weight as well. So that's really good for us. And then we have these things like these Nutrella, soy wada, you know, these vegetable soy protein nuggets that you can use. And then a new thing for India is soybeans. People are, when they're making the flour for the rotis, they're putting, you know, 1/5 or, you know, 1/4 soybeans and grinding that in there to increase the protein. So soybeans are a special topic that I actually want to talk about. Because in India, everybody is addicted to drinking milk. Everybody loves to have milk, and we're so habituated to having milk. Well, soybeans, you can actually make soy milk. And the amazing thing about soy is that soy has the highest protein of any type of pulse. It has the highest amount of protein and has a lot of energy as well. There's different varieties of soybeans. Some have more fat, some have more protein, but they all have very high protein, really, and they all have different tastes and flavors as well. Soy is one of the most researched foods on the entire planet. The reason is that so many people in these Asian countries, in China and Taiwan and Korea and other Asian countries, Thailand, you name it, they're drinking and eating a lot of soy. And it's such a used food. So people did research on this. They found that people who are eating this have less cancer, less heart attacks, less diabetes, less strokes, stronger bones, and other health benefits as well. So all the human studies, all studies done on humans, each and every one of them pretty much show a benefit if people are eating larger quantities. If you're having 2 to 4 servings a day for the majority of your life, you have many of these benefits. People who have small quantities, they may not have any benefit. There's no harm, but there's not much benefit. But people who are eating larger quantities on a regular basis throughout their life have these very big benefits. Okay, so I want you to go again to my health video. I'm going to remind you about my health. Just Google Dr. Tushar Mehta vegan diet and health and find my video on that, and I'll go into much more details about this. Okay, and basically, you know, because you can get soy milk, you can now use this soy milk in your chai, coffee. You can just drink the milk like that, and you can have all kinds of other milk products from soy that we're used to. And so it's much easy to adapt into our diet and give us this replacement for our protein if we're not going to drink as much milk. Okay. Now, why not? You can also make rice milk and oat milk and all these other kinds of milk as well, almond milk. But I don't recommend them as much because they don't have as much protein. And I think that in India, we want protein that's a cheap source of protein that's using less resources to make, and it's and so that's good for the vast majority of Indians who don't have a lot of money, let's say. So it's a great source of protein for most people, okay, who are vegetarian. Now, if you're in Canada, there are maybe 10, 15 different brands of soy milk. If you go to the store, there's so many different brands. People are starting to pick up on this, basically for their health, some because they like the taste, and some because they're vegetarian for this, they're vegan and they want to save animals. Silk, the one that you see in the slide there, the large one, is my favorite brand. I like the taste the best. Perfect taste for chai, perfect taste for coffee. It tastes, very close to milk, but different. I like it much better than I like actual milk. It's very white and it doesn't have any bean flavor. Same with the rest of the soy milks in Canada. There's no bean flavor there. They're very good. And the boxes that they have are easily recyclable. That's another nice thing about them. It's better to have no box at all, but these are very recyclable. Okay, but I'm going to give you some tips about soy in India. Okay, now in India, you get soy milk in Tetra Paks. Tetra Paks are horrible for the environment. They're one of the worst types of plastic packaging that there is. All of this plastic packaging is terrible for the environment. And, these Tetra Paks are just zero recyclable and they're just horrible. So that's one really bad thing. It's also expensive. And the other thing is we do over here, we add a lot of sugar to the soy milk. We have these flavors like kesar pista and chocolate, and it's full of sugar, so much sugar that it's going to cause diabetes and cause health problems. That's not good for your heart. Soy milk is good, but not with all the sugar. A tiny amount of sugar in the soy milk is okay. It actually improves the taste. Dairy milk, cow's milk has a small amount of sugar. If you put about the same amount of sugar, a tiny bit, it tastes slightly sweet. That's fine, okay? And but not more sugar than that. And stevia. Stevia is powder from a leaf, a natural leaf, and it has a sweet taste, but it's not sugar. It's actually, healthy because it doesn't give you all these problems that sugar does. So one thing that's easier to do than buying it from the market is making it at home. One day, what we would like to have is we would like to have local businesses with local machines. You go downstairs, or they deliver your soy milk to your house, fresh and hot every day, and they can have machines that are making very, very high quality soy milk. But also, you can make pretty good soy milk at your own home. There's the soy milk maker available, and Sunil Jain, actually, his name is selling this thing at no profit. Right now, he sells it for 6,500 rupees per unit, and that's his cost price. And when you have a machine like this, it takes less than 10 rupees to make a liter of soy milk. The price of soybeans is pretty cheap compared to milk, and you can make it just every day in your own home. And when you take it fresh from the machine, really hot in the morning, it tastes really good. Just a tiny bit of sugar, it tastes amazing. Okay, one tip is that the solid part, so when you make the milk, you have the milk and then you filter it and you have the solid part. The solid part also contains lots and lots of protein and fiber and is very, very good for you. And you can put this in your sabji, you can put this in your soup, you can mix it with your rice, in your khichdi. And also when you make rotis, when you make the dough for the roti, you put a percentage, maybe, 20% or 25% of this soya stuff that's left over, you mix it in there, you roll your rotis, and your rotis will become much higher protein and high fiber too, and increase the health impact of your rotis as well. So make sure we use that stuff as much as possible, because sometimes, mostly people feed it out to some animals or something. That's fine, but if we eat it ourselves, that's the best thing. Okay, we have to learn how to use it. Now, you can also use this machine to make almond milk, peanut milk, cashew milk, soup, juices, and all kinds of other things, make dal. So the machine is very versatile. And when you make soy milk, you can also mix a little bit of almonds, a little bit of cashews, and change the taste. It takes practice. The first thing I do, the best batch of milk that we made so far is we took the soybeans and we put them in a pressure cooker for 10 minutes. With a bunch of water, and then we drained out that water. We let them soak overnight with some more water, and we filtered out that water. And so that removes a lot of the bean taste, because the bean taste in China and places, they love it because they grew up with that taste. But for us, we're not used to it. So if we filter out some of that taste, we tend to like it better. So cooking the soybeans right away before breaking them and at a high temperature, cooking them right away in a pressure cooker very first, takes away a lot of that taste, and then filtering that water and soaking them, as I mentioned. That's one tip that we can use. You put the soaked soybeans, after filtering them in the morning, in the machine, and it'll make really, really nice soy milk. Okay, so I love this stuff, and it makes great coffee, or you drink it just like that, or you make different mixes. It takes a bit of practice. Now, chai, the chai taste from the Canadian soy milk and U.S. soy milk that I have tastes fantastic. This one I have to get a little bit used to, or I have to figure out to make it perfectly. So it takes a little bit of work. It takes a little bit of practice. Call Mr. Sunil Jain. He'll give you some tips. One of the tips is also putting some mint in the chai, but it's going to take a little bit of practice. Next year we'll have a video how to make the best chai from this soy milk machine. But so far, the original milk with a bit of sugar tastes fantastic. Same does the coffee, and you can even put some things like dates or almonds and things like that to make some even better flavors. Now, there's one thing about pure vegetarian diet that is more difficult, and that is the vitamin B12. There are no plant products that make vitamin B12. Zero. Okay? In fact, B12 people get generally nowadays from eating eggs, eating meat, or drinking milk. Okay, that's how most people get their B12. But there's no animal that makes B12 in its own body. It gets the B12 from outside. So cows and elephants and rhinoceros and gorillas, every animal that I show in this picture, all these mammals that are purely vegetarian, in fact, they're vegan, where do they get their B12? There's one more picture that I have there, and that's a champion bodybuilder from Australia. He was Mr. Universe in the natural competition, maybe meaning that they use no drugs at all, and they're all tested for drugs, and they're completely natural, and he won that competition. Again, he's a vegan. Okay, now, so how do all of these, and that guy's name is Billy Simmons, by the way, you can Google him. Okay, so look again at my video on vegan diet and health. But basically what I'm saying is that originally B12 does not come from plants or animals. It comes from bacteria. Bacteria are the only source, basically, of B12. And there's different bacteria. Some make a lot of it. Some maybe don't make so much of it. And that's our only real concern as vegans. So now, if you eat yogurt, yogurt is basically bacteria. Continue. Okay, so if you eat yogurt, yogurt is basically bacteria put into milk, and the entire batch of milk becomes full of bacteria that have consumed this dairy products, and they alter the milk, and it's full of bacteria. So in that similar way, you can grow the type of bacteria that make B12, that produce B12. You know, you don't have to eat those bacteria. You grow the bacteria. We do that in these sort of factories where they just like when they make yogurt, but they filter the water and they evaporate they filter the water. They evaporate the water, and what's left over is the B12. The vitamin B12 is left over, and from that you can make vitamin B12 supplements. They can add that to food. So in Canada and US and these places, they add the vitamin B12 to the soya milk and everything like that. In India, they do the same thing. Okay. We only need very little. In fact, we have bacteria in our large intestine that make B12. Now, some people have different bacteria. Some people may have more of this bacteria, some people don't. And some people absorb better, some people don't. So, you know, we still want to make sure that we're consuming B12 because it's hard to tell who's getting it, who's not. In fact, as a doctor, I test the B12 of so many of my patients. And many people, if they're vegan or vegetarian, or a lot of the people who are eating meat and eggs and dairy, they still have low B12. So a lot of people have low B12, and many people have to take B12 anyways. And doctors are giving injections all the time of B12. Well, doctors somehow have it in their mind that you have to give injection, but you don't need to give injections. Injections are not necessary. There are vitamin B12 tablets that contain 1,000 micrograms of B12. That's a lot of B12. Taking extra doesn't do any harm. The extra just goes out of your body and goes into your urine. But you can certainly get all of the B12 that you need just from taking the 1,000 microgram tablets. But remember, 1,000 microgram tablets. Now, if you just take this tablet, 1/4 of this tablet, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, you're going to get plenty of B12. That's more than enough B12 for you. In fact, that's enough B12 for the whole family. All you have to do is take 1/4 of a tablet, crumble it and put it in the food, and the entire family can get enough B12 if you just do that 3 times a week for 3 different meals, okay, on 3 separate days. Myself, I remember to take my B12 tablet maybe once a month, but I check my B12 once every year, or once every 3 years. I check it, and my B12 is fine. As a vegan, no problem. So most of us will be fine, because I get B12 from the soy milk that I drink. It has maybe 1 or 2 micrograms per glass, and I drink maybe 3 glasses a day, 4 glasses a day. That's fine, right? But you know, for most people, I will recommend taking the B12 supplement. In India, it's a little bit more expensive. You can get the 1,000 microgram tablets. It's about 7 rupees per tablet, 70 rupees per 10. In Canada, it's 1/10 of that price. It's like 1 rupee per tablet. And in India, it's going to get cheap too. We're going to see about, you know, as more and more people learn that, you know, we need B12, including all the people who are eating meat and drinking milk, they still have low B12, many of them. This tablet is going to get very cheap, okay? Because the raw material is so cheap, all right? And so that's the main thing. How did all the animals get the B12? Okay, basically they're eating food from the ground, they're drinking water from the lake or the river or the pond, and there's bacteria in all of these things. And a lot of times when they're eating the food, they're eating dirt and soil mixed with the food that they're eating. They're eating straight from the ground. We don't do that. We filter our water, we clean our vegetables and everything before we eat them. So we're washing away all the bacteria, and we don't get the B12. So naturally, in the old days when we're living in the jungle, we are going to drink water from all kinds of places. We're going to get our B12. We're going to eat food from the ground. We're going to get the B12. But now we only get from animal products. But we can also get this way, which is 100% vegetarian, just like yogurt. Instead, we're using these bacteria and filtering and getting the B12. Calcium and iron. How do you get calcium if you're not drinking milk? Well, there's lots of foods, lots of whole grains and quinoa and hemp seeds, sesame seeds, and all the pulses and beans. They all have calcium, okay? They also have iron. So go to the internet and go Google vegan calcium sources, vegan iron sources, and you'll see a long list of so many foods that have these things. To increase the absorption of the iron and calcium, it's nice to eat food that has vitamin C at the same time. Okay, so oranges, but also pumpkin and capsicum and all kinds of vegetables that are yellow and orange especially have lots and lots of vitamin C. And if you eat them at the same time when you eat the dal and eat these other foods, eat the kator and everything, you're going to get lots of B12. So I'm not saying that just eat soy all the time. Eat a mix of all these protein foods, but soy is one of the great sources that you eat in addition to all of the other foods. Because right now, a lot of people want lots of protein, and fine, there's some benefits, but be careful, sometimes you can get too much protein. Again, see my video, Google Dr. Tushar Mehta Vegan Diet and Health, and watch my video and see everything that you need to know about vegetarian, vegan, plant-based, whole food nutrition. Now, going on the internet, you will see 100 different websites saying that soy is bad for you. It ruins your thyroid. It has estrogen. This estrogen is a female hormone. It will affect men, and it will cause problems to women because they get too much of this hormone. And soy is bad. Soy is bad. Soy is bad. Soy is like the devil. Okay, you're going to see lots of websites that show this, and there's videos about this as well. Okay, but where do all these videos come from? These videos create this kind of paranoia against soy. But basically, all of these videos and all these websites are funded by large meat and dairy businesses in the United States, okay? They have billion dollar industries of meat and dairy. And as more and more people become vegetarian, or even if they're not vegetarian, they're just eating less meat and eating less dairy, these guys are losing millions and millions of dollars every day, okay? So they spend these millions of dollars creating all this false advertisement that soy is bad for you. And the reason they target soy is because soy is one of the highest protein foods. When they stop eating meat in those countries, people eat other products, and many times they have more soy in those products. So if they scare the people against soy and scare the people against veganism and vegetarianism and things like that, then people tend to eat more meat and eggs and dairy, and those industries continue to thrive. Okay? Now, in the studies of mice, when they took mice in the laboratory and they gave them injections of human cancer cells and did all kinds of things, they found, and they at the same time they give them a lot of soy hormones and soy, these things 40 times to 50 times the amount that a human can eat. It was bad for mice. But if you look at the human studies, and again, I'll make these available through you to the YouTube video that I have, we'll have the links for the human studies. It will have all the links to human studies of soybeans. See my video for the nutrition, and the links are there. And look soy in that document and see all the human studies. The humans, each and every study on soy, again, shows that there's less cancer, less breast cancer, less prostate cancer, and less heart disease amongst people who eat soy, and they live longer, have stronger bones. Okay? And in fact, when you do the studies on the lab studies of dairy, well, and meat and eggs and dairy all mostly come from the meat mostly comes from females, and the dairy and eggs also, they all come from females. They are full of the estrogen hormones of the chicken or the cow or the buffalo that gave the milk or the egg or whatever. Okay? Now, these are very, very strong. They're not some very, very light kind of plant hormone that's mimicking a human hormone. They are strong animal hormones and animal estrogen and animal progesterone that is in these meat, dairy, and eggs. And that is why meat, dairy, and eggs, one of the major causes that they cause more cancers of the breast and prostate. But there's other things in there that also cause cancer. But they are full of these hormones, and the lab studies show that they have these hormones, especially once the cow becomes pregnant, her hormone level becomes very high, and that milk has huge amounts of estrogen in it. Soy tastes great, but like I said, you have to train yourself a little bit. Anything that's new in taste is going to take a little bit of getting used to. When I tell people in Canada to try some Indian food and try some rajma and chickpeas and mung beans, they first think it's very weird and different, and the spices, they don't tolerate it. But after some time, they love it, and it becomes their favorite food. Same thing with soya milk. Okay, it tastes a little bit different, but they have this beanie kind of taste when you make it at home. But pretty soon, like people in China and Taiwan and all these places, we tend to love that taste. Okay, if you get the soy milk, when we get the systems that we have in North America, we'll make pure soy milk that doesn't have that flavor. But until now, you will like that flavor, I guarantee it. Okay, but you have to try it a few times, tiny bit of sugar, and remember that we're not living just for the taste, and suffering, for our taste, that so many millions and millions and really billions of animals have to suffer. Okay, we can live without making suffering and get used to a new taste, because we're human and we have that, higher level of consciousness that we can have compassion. All right, and we can increase our health. There's other soy foods. There's brilliant and beautiful soy ice cream, and tofu is the soy paneer we can use in our recipes. Great, so healthy. Soy coffee, as I mentioned. Tea with the Western soy milk is better, but with the Indian soy milk, we're gonna get used to it. We're gonna find a way to make it just as good. And there's these soy chunks like Nutella and all those things. Those things are a lot like meat. So people who are in India who are turning to vegetarian, getting used to vegetarianism, it's easy for them to use these things like Nutella because it mimics the meat in their recipe. It gives them that something to chew on, and they can use that as they become vegetarian. Remember, it's 100% vegan. So again, there's less cancer, less diabetes, less heart attacks, all those health benefits, but you still get a super high protein. So great for all these kids who want to become bodybuilders and become like Amir Khan and all these guys. Okay, you can take the soy flour and use it in different recipes too, but better yet, you make the soy milk at home and take the leftover solids and put it into the rotis and things like that. Aside from, the meat and dairy, we also want to get away from using ghee. So we have the oil from flax seeds, arnseed tel, right? Flaxseed oil. Tastes almost exactly like ghee. We can use it on our rotis, but the thing is, instead of causing cancer and heart disease, provides high amounts of plant omega-3s. These plant omega-3s are good for us, and we can use this on our roti. Okay, there's also canola oil, which is high in omega-3s, popular in Canada, just starting in India. Keep an eye for it because it's a very good oil. Okay, and there's olive oil, which is also great, and there's also soybean oil, which is also great. You can get it in India very easily at a cheaper price is soybean oil. It's good for omega-3s and everything like that. Safflower oil, sunflower oil has more omega-6, too much omega-6. So we think that's not as good, not as healthy as the olive oil, canola oil, flax oil, soybean oil. We think they're the better ones, actually. So go for those oils that I mentioned there, less for the safflower, sunflower oils. We get vegan margarine in Canada. You don't get it in India yet, but we get these margarines in Canada. Now, for making margarine, it's a substitute for butter, okay? It's healthier than butter. But the thing is, if you have the hard margarine, they do hydrogenation. They hydrogenate to make it a harder substance. That's more mimicking the butter. But the hydrogenation is not good for us. It's not healthy. It ends up having the same effect for cancer and for heart disease as if you were eating actual butter. So what we want to do is have the soft, non-hydrogenated margarine. Not so much available in India yet, but it's starting. So look out for it, ask for it, and within a few years, we're going to get it, okay? Soft, non-hydrogenated margarine, okay? So remember, the quantity of oil in India, people in a family maybe eat 3 or 4 kilograms every month of oil. It doesn't matter if you're eating the healthiest oil, but if you're eating that much oil, it's not good for you. We have to have small quantities of oil and use the healthiest kinds, okay? But too much oil, too much fat is not good no matter what you use. So be careful about that. And when you fry, when you're frying your foods, when you use high temperatures to fry foods, your good oil turns into bad oil because there's chemical changes at high temperatures. And when you're frying things, then it turns into this hydrogenation process starts happening in your oil, and that's not good for you. Another oil to avoid is palm oil. Palm oil has a lot of saturated fats. Palm oil is in all kinds of products. Avoid palm oil, okay? And go for these healthier oils. So avoid products with palm oil. Sometimes maybe okay, but avoid it. It's bad for you, okay? Same with coconut oil. A little bit is okay, but it's high in saturated fats, just like palm oil. A little bit is okay, but when people start saying use lots of coconut, they're making a mistake. It's very high in saturated fat. Now, a lot of Ayurvedic doctors are starting to learn about this thing, about animal products having these effects. In the old days, it saved your life. In the new days, you know, we get protein and calories from other sources. So they are starting to recommend pure veg and vegan diet. I know a lot of Ayurvedic doctors are doing it, but many are still very traditional. They don't know the newer science just yet. But they recommend soy, you know, over dairy, and flax over ghee, you know, and things like that. So it's starting now that these traditions in India are starting to keep the tradition, but go one step ahead. Okay. Remember also, eat low fat, like I said, not a lot of sugar, not a lot of refined carbohydrates like things with white flour and all these, you know, Maggi noodles and too much of that stuff, high amounts of salt. It's not good. Again, see my video about plant diet and health. I go over all this stuff in detail. Lots of fruits and vegetables are good for you. Do not overcook your vegetables. Eat like raw vegetables, or also have them kachapaka, you know, semi-cooked, because you get a lot more of the vegetables and the vitamins and fiber that way. Whole grains are good, but don't eat too much. We're not farmers, most of us. We're sitting and working in the office. If you eat 10 rotis every day or at a meal, you're going to get fat. That's not good. You know, you maybe only need 2. So keep your carbohydrate, your calorie intake limited. Whole grains are good, but just don't overeat. Legumes are good. Nuts are good, and seeds are good. Okay. Lentils, like I said, soy, all of these things are excellent for you, but eat in the proportion about the calorie intake that you need as a human being. Now, here's a big question. Everybody says, whoa, if we become pure vegetarian and we stop eating any animal products, what's going to happen to all the cows and buffaloes? Will they disappear from the earth? You know? And the answer to that is no. Okay? The thing is that we're still going to have cows and buffaloes, but instead of having 30 crores, like that means 300 million, which are killing all the environment and killing off all the animals and taking up all the space, okay? We can have a small number. We can have 100,000. That's plenty to maintain a species. We can have 200,000, 400,000. We can have 1 million. We can have 10 million, but not 300 million. And in that case, if we have animals at such a small number, there's going to be a few of them around, and we just have to watch the population growth, just like humans have to watch their population growth and the amount of pregnancies that we do. Okay? If we do that, we can be compassionate to a small number of animals. And we can make sure that every single animal, none of them have to be slaughtered. And every time a cow has a baby boy or a baby girl, that baby boy or girl can stay with the mother for a long time, as many years as it takes for them to be mature and live as a family, and for them to have their connection as a family, because they feel those feelings about a family. But we just have to control the amount of pregnancies that we do. Okay, people may still use the cow dung in the farms, or cow dung for building materials. They can make some bricks and building materials with that. They may still use the urine for Ayurvedic medicines. That's fine. We don't need 300 million or more than 1 billion worldwide. We don't have to make everyone pregnant every year and have 300 million births every 4 years to do this. We can just, the same buffalo or cow can give us urine for the entire life without getting pregnant. Okay, we don't need to do that. So we can have a stable population and still get some of these things, and we don't have, you know, this repeated cycle of pregnancy. Remember, if every 4 years we have 300 million births, in 40 years, that's 3 billion deaths. That's 3 billion births and 3 billion deaths. The amount of killing is astronomical. What we need to do is stabilize the population by not getting them pregnant over and over again for the purpose of milk and dairy products. Now, as we reduce the population, of course, we must keep, you know, trying to protect them from slaughter and cruelty in all kinds of ways. But now, if we're not getting them pregnant, we do have enough land and water that we can feed the existing cattle population. So now we don't have to, you know, it's not that they're forced to die or they're going to die from starvation or something like that. If we stop getting them pregnant, we now have enough food and water to keep them alive for their whole life, and slowly the population will reduce. And once we get to a certain point, we just stay at that population, like I said, whether 100,000 or 1 million, whatever, but we can keep at the small sustainable population, no problem. Okay, and all the other animals can repopulate. We can have elephants coming back in forests, and tigers and giraffes, and all the forests that have been taken over. We can let them grow back, many of them, and allow natural animals to live also in balance with the animals like cows and buffaloes that are domesticated. They can all exist peacefully together. That is our goal, not to eliminate the species from the earth. That is not our goal. Okay. Okay, so here are some examples. Bill Clinton, he became vegan for a few years. He's not perfectly vegan anymore, but he did it for his health, to protect his heart. Mike Tyson became vegan for Jivdaya purposes. Dave Scott is the Ironman winner, one of the top Ironman people in the world. 6 times winner in the Hawaiian Ironman. The Ironman, you have to swim 4 kilometers, and then cycle 180 kilometers, and then run 42 kilometers continuously. And he's the top in that 4 years in a row, and he's vegan. Okay, and the other champions of Ironman have also been vegan. The UFC champ, Jake Shields, and a few other UFC fighters, some of the top fighters in some of the categories, have been vegan over the past few years. They're as strong, as powerful, as fast as anybody else. Serena Williams, one of the top athletes in the world, vegan. Okay, she did it for health purposes, but she's been vegan for a few years, and she's won the Wimbledon and gold medals in the Olympics. All right, so the best athletes can be vegan. So our health, our athletics, our environment, and everything can be better on a pure vegetarian diet. But of course, it has to be a whole food, plant-based diet, and we have to get enough protein. We have to use our brains as we're doing this. Now, people in India, they think of Gai, Ganga, and Gita. You know, the cow, the Ganga River, and the Gita itself. You know, and these represent Indian traditional values. In a superficial way, we think that cows are right now respected in India, but they're not. There are 300 million deaths from this population growth we talked about in 6 years. Population growth from 10 to 100, exponential growth, and so many deaths of cows and this slaughtering happening in India. Instead, if we were pure vegetarian, if we were vegan, we can have a small population and we can really respect the cows. But Gai doesn't just mean cows in Indian philosophy. It means really all living things. And we can respect all living creatures by living more in balance and balancing our populations. When we talk about Ganga, we talk about the environment and rivers and waters and their spiritual connection with all of nature. Right now, the meat and dairy industry around the world is the biggest cause of forest loss, water pollution, and everything. Again, if we bring the population to a lower level, and if you're pure vegetarian, we can preserve much more of nature. It doesn't solve all of the problems, because there are still too many humans with too many industries and plastic and all these things. But this is one of the big problems. We have to also stop the other problems too as we respect nature. And last is Gita, our reverence for philosophy, science, spirituality, and thinking, and open-mindedness. Okay, this reflects our mental spirituality and thinking, you know, and respect for every religion. And, you know, this, again, pure vegetarian diet. We see people like Mahatma Gandhi, he was vegetarian, and Einstein, he became vegetarian. They didn't know so much about the whole dairy industry in that time, but in this day and age, they would understand. And modern philosophers do. When we look at every religion on our earth, the picture that I have in the bottom left there is a picture from the Garden of Eden. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, they all believe, all of their beliefs start with God who created the Garden of Eden. That was the first thing that God created, was earth and the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, everybody was vegetarian. Everybody was vegan. Even the animals, they were vegetarian. No animal ate another animal, and no human ate an animal. And everybody lived perfectly in balance with each other. And this was God's most highest plan and most highest value. And then people sort of made some mistakes, and they got out of that situation, and there was violence and all kinds of things that happened in the earth since then. But the highest value that was in those religions started in that point in the Garden of Eden. So we see that compassion for all life is there in every religion, okay? And even our most modern and best philosophers like Gandhi, Einstein, and so many current philosophers who are alive today also see this, and they're also vegetarian and vegan, and they believe in compassion for life, environment, and health. So we can definitely do this, okay, and respect the truest values of India, Gaya, Ganga, and Gita, by having this kind of a diet and living in balance. So the biggest summary of the whole entire talk is that we have this exponential growth in cattle population. As I mentioned, within 6 cycles or 6 to 8 years, you go from population of 10 cows in dairy production to 100, 45 bulls, 45, females. And we have this death from all causes, not just slaughter, but they will die, if not slaughtered, they will die through starvation or drought or illness or abandonment and eating plastic, because there's not enough space for all of them. Okay, and if you go to a place like Kutch, for 500 rupees, they're selling off these extra animals that nobody knows what to do with, simply for the dairy industry. About 300 million will die every 3 to 4 years, with the current rates of making them all pregnant every 1 to 2 years. You'll double the population, and there's not enough space. 1 birth roughly means 1 death. Okay, the vegan diet is a solution. We have so many great plant-based foods of our 4 vegan food groups. One of the big helpers is soy, which has such a super high protein, and we can love and use soy milk in all of our dishes, but also eating all the other great protein foods that we have. B12, one thing that we have to watch for. And see my video about vegan diet and health. We can increase our health, help the environment, okay? And cows and buffaloes can live in a smaller population, coexisting with humans and all other life forms in our environment, if we keep a small number. But that's through a plant-based diet, because we're not making them pregnant every single year. So I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you have learned something new, and we will all continue to learn together and think together and work together to protect animals and protect humans and improve our health and the environment and everything like that. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in some future videos as well. And good luck to everybody out there.